Good afternoon. We are going to start our meeting. It's 12:07, and call the meeting order 12:07, and then that will bring us to item number 2, which is reports, presentation of upcoming 2023-2024 elementary schedule. So I'll pass over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President Itabali and trustees. The administration is prepared to share information regarding our proposed elementary schedule for the 23-24 school year. I think that what you'll find in the information tonight is that, as we've thought about, let me back up just a second. When I first arrived to El Paso ISD, we engaged the community twice in an effort to understand what the community's hopes and dreams are for the future and the education of their children. And so in many of those conversations, what bubbled to the top and is a huge part of our strategic blueprint is associated with whole child development. But more specifically, as we received comments through the Thought Exchange platform, and as we engaged the stakeholders who were present at the Hopes and Dreams sessions, there was a lot of conversation from elementary parents and from elementary students that they were seeking additional choice, and more options and more opportunities at the elementary level. I'd like to also point out that as a school district, we've done a phenomenal job of providing that level of choice at the secondary level. And we have much work to do as we think about building pipelines from the elementary to the high school level so that our students are prepared, they understand what opportunities lie before them, and they begin to understand what their strengths are as they matriculate through our system. And so as we've planned forward for the 23-24 school year, we talked about introducing that level of choice at the elementary level. And as we've moved forward with that, we've received information and feedback from our parents. So I've received some emails. My staff has met with parents. I have met with parents. And we've taken some of that feedback and used it to kind of figure out how we get to a place where we can unify as a community. And so I believe that although one of the goals that we have as a school system is to engage the community. I think that that's a big part of what we do. In our mission, we share that we're committed to partnering with our community to build high-quality learning experiences for our students. And so where we are today presents a golden opportunity for us to come together as a community and have an open dialogue about the possibilities for our students in the future, and to really think about how do we deliver on the promise of a brighter future for our students. So although engagement comes, healthy engagement is not always engagement that's unified. Healthy engagement means that there may be some opposition, there may be some varying opinions, and which is why I go back to this being a golden opportunity for us to use that as an open door for us to come together as a community and dialogue about this topic. And learn about, what makes parents curious, what makes parents feel confused, what questions might parents have, what feedback might they offer us so that we can build the best plan possible, again, in service to children and delivering on the promise of a brighter future for our students. And so, I've taken to heart as a leader, as I said, in an effort to show the community that we're listening and that our intent is to be as transparent as possible as we continue to consider possibilities for our children and introduce some change, but working alongside parents as we work through the process. And so I invite our administrative team to step forward so that they can share some information with you on how we've taken some of the early feedback that we've received so that we are honoring the true essence of choice for parents, whether that choice be PE, or whether that choice be fine arts, or whether that choice be in another area. But with the intent of meeting the needs of our students and moving closer to building a school system rather than a system of schools. So at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Gonzalez so that she can introduce the presentation and we can begin to share some of the adjustments that we've made as we look forward to launching our 23-24 school year.
Good afternoon, Board President Arabali, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Saavedra. I'm Dr. Carla Gonzalez. I'm Chief of Schools, and joining with me, am really excited to introduce to you our new elementary school leadership team. Al Garcia is joining us as Assistant Superintendent Elementaries. Dana Boyd is our Executive Principal for Andrus, Irvin, and Burgess feeder patterns. Lily Aguilera is coming from Huey Elementary, now newly minted, Executive Principal. She will be overseeing our Southside, Jeff, Bowie, Chapin, and Austin. And then Michelle Romero is joining us as Executive Principal overseeing Franklin, Coronado, and the El Paso High feeders. So we're thrilled to have them on board, and they've done a great deal of work side by side with our principals as we work through the scheduling and meeting with parents. And we're excited that we're giving a couple of moments of opportunity to share with you this afternoon our options for elementary scheduling moving into the new school year. As we want to begin all of our presentations and just reminding all of our stakeholders the importance of our vision and mission, and that this is what drives the decisions that we make and what we want to provide for our students, our teachers, and our community. Our vision is inspire and empower learners to thrive, and our mission really is tied and anchored in the partnership with our families and our community. We want the highest standards to be inclusive and fair in our learning experiences, and we want to support the whole child. And absolutely the scheduling and what Ms. Saavedra shared with you is very much around whole child development. Our core beliefs and values of the 6, all of them are tied into scheduling and the educational experiences provided our students at all levels. Whole child, again, is what we're anchoring and what we're trying to do and how we're changing the elementary schedule and the experience for our students. Our strategic plan, our strategic blueprint, and our 5 levers. Scheduling, it touches all 5. Again, whole child development is what we're anchoring in, but you're going to see as we discuss the options that we're putting forward for our campuses, for our parents and our communities to select from. It also is reinforcing academic excellence. It is definitely accountability and being accountable for what happens on our campuses, equity by design, and because we want to be innovative, we want to provide choice, we want to expand those learning experiences for our students, we will become the destination district. As Ms. Saavedra mentioned, a lot of this really began back in Hopes and Dreams in the fall and spring of 22-23. Over 1,200 stakeholders, these were from students to staff to community members, parents, staff from teachers to administrators to our support, all took part in these Hopes and Dreams sessions. 8,000 comments were submitted, and one of the things that emerged strongly was whole child development and the importance of that. 23-24 decided that elementary schedules needed to be strengthened, they needed to be structured, and they needed to prioritize instructional time. They would include designated enrichment and intervention time. You're going to see something called WIN. It stands for What I Need. It supports the unique needs of every student and offers specials and choice opportunities. We're going to call 23-24 our research year because this is a time for us to look at what we're doing differently, and get feedback throughout the year. We want to create a balanced instructional experience. We want to expand student choice and extend learning opportunities. And we also very much want to secure planning time for teachers and try to build as much of that within the school day as possible. We're rolling out a new curriculum, so we know our teachers are going to need opportunity individually and through professional learning communities to really be able to dive deep into the curriculum to understand what's coming up, how our students are responding, and how we adjust to those responses. This is very important. It may seem like something that's often taken for granted. In our secondary campuses, we have very structured time for our courses. But at the elementary, what we're doing is the first time we've done this in this way for as long as I can remember. And we're really establishing firm, non-negotiable in the amount of time we're dedicating and prioritizing and protecting for instruction. Every student will have 120 minutes of reading language arts a day, 90 minutes per math per day, 45 minutes protected for science, 45 minutes for social studies, and for our kinder through second graders, our reading language arts and social studies is combined. It's like a humanities integrated approach. We want 45 minutes of PE, and you'll see an asterisk there, /fine arts. The one asterisk is option A that we'll detail for you in a moment. Also 45 minutes of WIN, that whatever I need, intervention, acceleration, or an option B, fine arts. And then every student every day has 40 minutes, that's lunch and recess time. That is not impacted in any way. All of these times that you see on this slide, they're protected. And in doing that, we're ensuring that they're getting deep-rooted instruction, Tier 1 instruction, and that the curriculum that our academics team has designed will be able to be implemented to its fullest. We're not going to borrow anywhere in order to provide intervention, to have accelerations. These are all instructional prioritized minutes. Beginning with option A, there's two versions of everything because what a kindergartner through fourth grader experiences is different from our fifth graders. Fifth grade is the first year that we actually introduce choice, and that choice is in the form of orchestra for the majority of our students. So option A is 4 days of PE with 1 day of fine arts. That could be music, general music, it could be art. It really depends on the staffing of the campus. Now, if a parent, student decides they want to opt out of the fine arts, having that daily PE is what is a priority for them, then they can opt out of that. And that would be keeping the 5 days of PE. Everybody gets 5 days of WIN. And in WIN, it's again, I can't stress enough, it's what the student needs. So it could be a chance to accelerate, it could be a chance to close some learning gaps and be able to experience some different instructional experiences. It could be library time, makerspace, counseling, just a variety of opportunities are presented to us when we secure the WIN slot. All of our options include the 20 minutes for recess each day. This provides students time for unstructured physical play, and that's always tied to lunch. And our best practice and what we encourage is recess before lunch. That will be reoccurring. Here helps, this is the actual visual. You can see option A, they have PE, and it's the fine arts would be on a rotating schedule. It wouldn't always be on Friday. It does secure the WIN all week long, but we do have that opt-out of the fine arts. That's what's on the bottom half of the screen. That provides 5 days of PE and still 5 days of WIN. That's option A for our kinder through fourth. Now, fifth grade gets spicy because we introduce that first chance to have a real elective offered to them. Again, they still have their 4 days of PE, the 1 day of fine arts. It could be music or art. They can opt out of the fine arts, giving them a full 5 days. If they select orchestra, orchestra would replace where WIN was located in the schedule. So if they're an orchestra student, they would then have 5 days of orchestra and no WIN. Now, you'll see on the fourth bullet, it says 3 days of orchestra, 2 days of WIN. We want to build in the importance of providing intervention support during the school day. We feel it's unfair to ask parents to bring students in before or have to stay late to provide something we feel should be offered during the school day. So if a student does want to opt into orchestra, but we, based on our screening, our beginning of the year assessments, academically, we know there's still some gaps that need to be closed, working administrative, teachers, and parent together to determine they could use 1 or 2 days, giving orchestra 3, WIN 2, if that makes sense. It gives those orchestra students who still need, they still have a little bit of a gap instructionally, gives them an opportunity to get that smaller group instructional assistance, with our goal being they could eventually work their way to 5 days of orchestra. Once they're showing that academic growth, then we can scale back on that intervention time for them. And then our non-orchestra students, they would have the 5 days of WIN. Recess remains the same, and here's the graphic. A little bit more busy, but because fifth grade has options. You see at the top, that's the option A as presented. The second section is if the parent has opted out and wants 5 days of PE. You have the full orchestra for those students opting in. You have a hybrid orchestra and WIN. And then you have for those students who are not selecting orchestra. Now we'll go to the next option, which is option B. Again, kinder through fourth, keeping 5 days of PE as we have now. Where fine arts comes into play is during the WIN section. 4 days of WIN, 1 day of fine arts. This is what it would look like on the schedule. Again, the fine arts rotates throughout, similar to how it did in option A, only this time it's WIN that it's working in with. PE is untouched, 5 days. Fifth grade, fairly straightforward in the same manner, 5 days of PE, 5 days of orchestra with no WIN. If our data shows that the student is right where they need to be. We still can offer some WIN, a hybrid with orchestra for those students needing that. And then our non-orchestra students have 4 days of WIN and 1 day of fine arts. And this is how it would play out, how it looks on a master schedule. Very similar. The biggest difference is where we have the fine arts. PE 5 days, and then the fine arts drops into the WIN, and it alternates with those 4 days. Just to reinforce, by utilizing PE and WIN time, we are protecting the crucial instructional minutes and safeguarding to ensure access that all students will have to Tier 1 instruction. When we're having WIN, when we're having interventions, we're not pulling from English language arts or math. We're not getting only half of the science curriculum in a school year or only half of the social studies because those are the traditional places to pull from. We're protecting that time. One of the reasons this is so critical is not only for our elementary, it impacts them as they reach middle and high school. We've seen, just looking at our data, our students do not have the foundation for science and social studies, and it shows in the STAR scores in our 8th graders, as well as when we get into the high school level and they're taking biology and U.S. history. We want to ensure that that information, that exposure is there. Not only that, science is a beautiful complementer to math. The STEM approach. It helps reinforce and expands the student's understanding of why it's important. Also, social studies gives us foundational information as well as reading materials that students need to have exposure to in order to increase their literacy rates and their understanding of different types of narratives that they'll be reading for assessments. If they're already only reading what maybe they're getting out of an English language arts course, social studies gives them a different perspective, a different lens. It's exposing them to more types of literature. Again, going back to our research year, we're going to begin early on in the semester to begin gaining feedback from our parents, from our stakeholders, using very much our modus operandi from our hopes and dreams, continuing to use that thought exchange, which is a very powerful way for a lot of ideas, a lot of people to engage. We'll have that similar type of feedback. We'll have it by feeder pattern, elementaries by Franklin, by El Paso High, by Andrews Meeting, through a thought exchange type evening to give us feedback early on in the semester. We're going to then again check at the 6-week point, which is parent-teacher conference time, in order to gain more insight as they come for the parent-teacher conferences. And all of that will be provided to the Student Health Advisory Council Committee. SHAC is what drives our work, especially with student health and physical education. And so they're going to really be the keeper of the information that we gather for them. They will be helping to make recommendations that they will be bringing to you. SHAC brings updates every year. We'll probably be bringing them more frequently, especially because we want to be tracking how this is working, our parent responses, our student responses, and our staff responses. Again, as I was describing, we'll use that hopes and dreams style feedback, probably even before, sometime late in August. And then again in September, we'll have parent-teacher conferences. And then the information, as I said, SHAC will be the keeper of the information. They'll help sort of then build and bridge any recommendations they would be bringing to you as the board. It may impact policies or regulations. All of that remains to be seen. It will be based on the feedback that we get from our communities as we begin working through this model. Why I say it'll be later in August before we start having conversations, WIN As we start any new school year, there's always a little bit of time that we're assessing where our students are, what their needs are. And so it will be, as talking with principals earlier today, it may be a week or two before schedules really settle into place and when starts in truly the form that it will be. Because we want to make sure if we're going to assign students based on their need, that we have some time to really look at the data to be able to determine that and be able to open up student choice for those that are in situations that would be able to take advantage of some different types of specials and some different accelerated possibilities. I think we're going to wrap up. Again, just as as we started, it's the whole child development. We want all children to explore their unique strengths and interests at the elementary level. And because it starts with us, we inspire and empower our students to thrive. So with that being said, we're here to answer questions, concerns, what ifs. I'll have my team to also help me, but if there's any questions we could begin with, be happy to field those.
Trustee Call.
Thank you for that presentation. I feel like I finally kind of get it. I know scheduling is really complicated, but I'm curious about this notion of the when time period. Who decides what happens during when? Is it, do the parents have any say in that? Is it strictly the teachers or the campus administrators? And also, is it classroom by classroom? Like this classroom is working on math during when? Or is it like, is there pods within the classroom? Like these kids are working on math, these kids are working on reading, et cetera?
Yeah, some of the schools have been doing this type of model pretty much on their own already. And so based on that and what we know is best practice, why we need a couple weeks to sort of figure out where kids need to be and what are the most immediate needs for them. Then we decide based on the grade level, the teachers, it may be we have our interventionists coming on board. There's some new positions in all of our campuses, interventionists for math and for literacy. They would probably, during when, they would be the ones most directly working with what we would consider our Tier 3 students, those that are really showing a more significant learning loss that we need to close. Our Tier 2 would be classroom teachers, but again, it could be divided. It wouldn't be everybody just stays in the one class. It could be these group of students really need to maybe work on this particular aspect of reading. So Mr. Garcia is going to take this group. Ms. Boyd is going to take our GT. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to really start implementing, expanding, and building back in gifted and talented opportunities for our students. We may have another teacher that's going to take more some STEM program, and for the first 3 weeks, they're going to do some robotics, maybe play around with coding. It really will come down to what students need and what can be designed based on the number of teachers that we have available. The more teachers we have, again, we have more students, but we want to make sure students have not only interventions, but we have opportunities for them to accelerate learning. And that will be why we want to have discussions with students and with parents. What are the things you'd like to see? We know we would like to have them have more exposure to fine arts. That's why we're entering it in. We'd like them to see more about the STEM type fields. We'd like to start integrating those things that we only save now as clubs and after school activities, build those in and give those an opportunity at WIN. And that WIN is not for an entire year. It is as students are progressing, or maybe we have 3-week cycles, and then we can move students into different activities. So there's almost like a rotation. And that way they're getting some, we used to call them instructional wheels, where you had a little bit of dabbling in a lot of different subject areas, and you would just move from one to another. And it gives them an opportunity to experience things, say, I like that, I'd like to do more of that, or that was okay, I'm never going to choir again. But that's, and Ms. Salvator, I think.
Yes, but the direct response to your answer, Mr. Call, is that, who decides? I think that, again, I'm going to go back to our mission that we're committed to partnering with our community and with our parents. And we want our parents to be engaged in helping us make decisions that are in the best interest of their children. But using data to show parents, here's where your children, or here's where your child might be. Here are some recommendations that we might make based on what we know and how we want your child to progress through the system, as it pertains to academics. But there's also information that the family's going to be able to offer to help us figure out, okay, well, although we think that intervention is the best way, how many days of that would we really use? And so having good information from the home in terms of what parents know their children need, and information from the school in terms of here's what we're challenged with, here's where we see the progress of your child, and coming together to make a decision. That's what it means to have a partnership between the school and the family, and we want to create those opportunities.
I look forward to that. And while we're all here in the same room, I've been meaning to say this for a while, but this is very relevant to this conversation. But I hope that during these win periods or any time during the day, we can keep these kids effectively engaged. I know there's a lot of different moving parts here with people needing different things and working on different things, but one of the things I've been personally concerned about is like the unstructured time that the kids have on devices. I've heard from quite a few constituents and even my own kids about like the amount of free time, whether it was meant to be free time or not. Probably not, but either way, they're playing Minecraft and watching sometimes problematic content on YouTube and what have you. So I hope we can keep these kids engaged. Thank you.
And that definitely came through on some of the feedback from parents, especially those that are hesitant about when, because they sort of, I think sometimes it's perceived as it's just for students who need intervention. And that even just to your point, one comment was, I just don't want to hear that my son was put on a device and on some kind of program for those 45 minutes, why teachers needed to focus on students who needed more one-on-one instructional. And so we're very dedicated to ensuring that that's not going to happen.
And one of the things that, as we think about looking at data, and something that I want to say loud and clear, for a year's worth of instruction for every child in our system, we should see a year's worth of growth. And so many times, children where we don't see a year's worth of growth are children who already come ready, set, wired with very enriched experiences from home. And so as we look carefully at our data, and even when children are successful, if the data shows that we're not growing them, then there's an opportunity for acceleration or deeper enrichment so that we do see the growth for that student. So it may be that Daniel Call comes to 4th grade reading on a 5th grade level when we assess him at the beginning of the year. Well, if at the middle of the year, where we should see him progressing at least half a year's worth of growth, if there's no growth and he's still reading at almost the same grade level that he was when he entered our system, then again, we're not producing a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of instruction. So does that make sense? And so win time, that this is an opportunity within the school day to address those issues as well. Mm-hmm.
Trustee Hernandez.
My question was thank you so much for that explanation and welcome to our new team up here. I wanted to know, how are we going to be able to manage the variety of requests, like Ms. Saavedra was saying? Just to add on what they were saying, the first thing that came to my mind was, okay, are we going to put all of those that are interested in orchestra or fine arts, whatever? But how do we know that maybe by mid-year, like you were saying, that it doesn't work? And do we have the infrastructure to make sure that we can manage all these variety of requests? And are we going to be able to be as flexible as we'd want to be? I don't work in the school system, so I'm just thinking, if we're going to have all these options, are we ready for those changes or variety of requests?
So let's start with the choices that are already part of what we do in El Paso ISD. So we do offer fine arts. We do, a couple of varieties of fine arts. We offer orchestra, and we have PE. The issue that we're trying to solve is that in not every case across the school district do kids have access to those choices. So it's a conversation about access just as much as it is a conversation about choice. And so in this research year, the number of choices may be somewhat limited and may feel more traditional of what you'd see as we engage on what does that possible expansion of choice look like in terms of the priorities and the needs of a given community, right? Now, the infrastructure that we've created to, as some board members have shared, to make sure that the time is structured. If you recall, we're using our entitlement money to support each campus with math and literacy specialists who, for children who need additional time and support to bridge any skill gap that they may have in that area, we have, part of master scheduling is making sure that you have staff and you have structured time where kids go to receive what they need, right? And so we do have staffing, and again, it's a research year, so we're going to be monitoring this, and at campuses where there may be a need for additional staff, we're going to have to look at where we have inefficiencies of staff and then use that staff in a very strategic way, and/or we may be in a position where we need to add staff because it's that much of a priority for us to make sure that we can use this research year to really determine what it's going to take, because in year 2 and year 3, when, or for year 2 and beyond, when the recommendations come, we'll have to strategically invest in how that looks going forward, right? So I'm confident that we've got an infrastructure that's going to allow us to launch for year 1, and to begin to research and really dig into the possibilities for the future alongside our community and our parents, so that we can put together some firm recommendations for year 2 and beyond that will also inform how we invest our budget, you know, whether it comes from entitlements, whether it comes from grants, whatever funding source it comes from, to be able to kind of invest in those recommendations once the board determines that they're viable, you know, in year 2 and beyond.
Well, I think it's a wonderful concept. That's good.
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Dr. Gonzalez and the rest of the team, thank you all for your work that you've done in putting this presentation together. I guess if you want to follow along where I'm reading from, instructional minutes, I guess, on the PowerPoint. So kind of two-folded question here. The last point, right, the 40 minutes for lunch recess time, I know that it states it, right, there's built-in 20 minutes of, you know, the unstructured time. But let me back up a little bit. A lot of the emails and phone calls that I've been receiving from a lot of the community members that are in District 2 are, one, you know, it's already one of those issues where obesity, different types of things, especially in the El Paso area, are not only on the rise, but it's almost like catastrophic when in comparison to different places. And now we're cutting down on PE and physical education time. And with PE being so important to the overall health, you know, we talk about the whole child, and it's one of those things where the whole child means the, you know, social development, the health, the mental well-being, you know, the physical well-being of the child. But you talked about something, Dr. Gonzalez, and I know you said, you know, it would be opportune to have that 20 minutes of recess at the beginning, and that's just not how it happens, right? Talking to anybody's children in here that go to lunch, the bigger the campus, the longer it's going to take to get lunch. Smaller the campus, the quicker it is, you know, to get lunch. But that's banking on the fact that that child is going to play after he or she eats, right? Or after they eat. So to cut down on PE even further is a real issue for me, and for a lot of the community members that I represent. I can't speak for the rest of the districts because I haven't spoken to those parents, but in terms of that, it goes on to talking about the 40 minutes, and I know that this isn't built in, but the secondary schools, you know, when we talk about the bell schedule, I think right now high school students, at least at Burgess, are getting 30 minutes to eat. That means teachers get 30 minutes to eat. That's difficult. For any student, I remember, when I went to Burgess, it took me 10 minutes to get to the cafeteria or less, a little bit less. I waited in line for another 10 or 15 minutes, and we had 52 minutes, right? That time has almost been cut in half. And I know I'm kind of going off a little bit there, but it still goes with making sure that the child is fed, right? These might be the only meals that these kids get the entire day, right? Breakfast and lunch, and I know some campuses offer a dinner option. But how would you address that? Is there a way to maybe have recess before lunchtime, but then we cut down on lunchtime, and then that might lead to different problems? I'm finding issues here, that's all.
So let me start, Mr. Cuellar, and then I'll hand it over to Dr. Gonzalez. And so one of the reasons why we're presenting the options that we're presenting to you today is to ensure that if parents want 5 days of PE, they have the option to continue with 5 days of PE. So so there's no disruption in that physical activity. To address your issue of 40 minutes of lunch and recess time, you're absolutely correct. As we've assessed where we are at the elementary level, although there's a policy that was specifically written to address recess, we're finding inconsistencies across the school district in terms of when that recess is when we can schedule that recess. And so our commitment is to work alongside principals for, as many grade levels and as much as possible to structure that recess, because the research does show that when it's before lunch, then when kids come in, they're more apt to eat, and sometimes when they eat before they go play, they're thinking about going to play. They're not thinking about eating their lunch. And I think that when we think about prioritizing that for our younger kids who may be more distracted about the prospect of going to recess rather than eating their lunch, that we ensure that, especially at the early grades. But when we start thinking about fourth and fifth, it may be an opportunity for us to really emphasize wellness practices, and when we can't find an opportunity to schedule recess 20 minutes before lunch in those grade levels, that we may maybe use other means to educate children on why it's important, for them to eat a healthy meal and things of that nature. I don't think that there's going to be a perfect schedule where we can guarantee that, but that is a commitment that we know is one that the board wants us to really work towards. And then just addressing, as we think about any additional choice that we introduce going forward in year 2 and year 3, I think that, again, communities like the community that you serve will be able to share what they would like to see in their elementaries, right? And so I think that's the place where we're coming from, that we feel like the dialogue, that we're primed for open dialogue for us to get to a place where if we've got 10 feeder patterns, and we've got unique needs in some of our feeder patterns, that we still have a school system that sets parameters, but also allows for community choice, if you will. And if there's a community that says, absolutely, the greatest priority that we have is that we don't, mess with any PE time, because, we'd rather those opportunities come after school, before school, or at a private time that we can, then that's what we would do. But, again, our goal is really to create opportunities within the school day, especially for children and families who don't have access to those kinds of experiences outside the school day, right? While we keep physical activity, because of the unique needs of our community as a whole, in terms of obesity, the incidence of diabetes and all that in mind, absolutely.
Mr. Harry, I do want to acknowledge what you had mentioned on the secondary. We're also, in our high schools, we're integrating a WIN period, but our goal was not to, we know how important a lunch is for our high schoolers as well as the teachers. I will work, with our secondary team to check that. Mr. Y will just fall through the floor now that he knows he's on the radar and we're going to be showing up and wanting to see what he's done. I don't know if that's a multi-lunch also type schedule. In our middle schools, quite often 30 minutes is what the grade levels have. It's because they have 3 or 4 lunches. But you're absolutely right. Historically, in our high schools, we try to give the kids a little bit longer so they can relax, have a little bit of decompression time before we're heading back into the afternoon classes. So we'll definitely follow up on that.
Dr. Acevedo?
Okay, so I'm trying to get this understanding. So right now, the schedule is PE and fine arts every day, right? Like in this past school year, it was PE and fine arts every day.
No, it was PE every day, but fine arts was on a rotating basis unless you were an orchestra student, and then you did have the 5 days of orchestra. But from 5th graders who didn't choose orchestra, and then K to 4, it was either art or general music, and it wasn't, as it's been shared with us, and this is why we're looking at our staffing with fine arts to be able to provide that one specialty class with fine arts at least once a week. Sometimes it was once every 8 days or once every 2 weeks they would have art or they would have general music. But PE was every day, and then the fine arts just rotated on a rotating basis, and it wasn't, on some campuses it was once a week, others it was a longer period of time between the fine arts course.
I think that the big thing to emphasize here, Dr. Acevedo, in terms of what we're proposing and what's currently in place, to meet that every day of PE and the rotation of fine arts, students were being pulled from science and social studies to make that happen in some cases. And so the schedule that we're proposing stays true to instructional minutes, which by law we have to deliver, while providing within the school day interventions, which were not consistent across elementaries, and guarantees PE every day, and if a parent opts into fine arts, once a week, and whatever other choices. So our schedules in the past pulled from instructional time to make those things happen. And I think that's where that's what really prompted a close look at how we were scheduling our students and developing a set of parameters for our elementary principals to consider, as they were moving forward for 23-24. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there was not a guaranteed within the school day intervention time on every campus. And there were a significant number of campuses who were pulling from science and social studies to make the rotations for fine arts happen. And, and what we had was pockets of excellence where there were campuses that were really, making it happen. Tom Lee is an example of that. And there were other campuses where that just wasn't the case.
And so I'm still a little confused. That everything you said made sense, but you're saying that fine arts was not every day, it was rotated with art and music, is that?
The art and music depends on, some campuses have an art teacher, some campuses has a general music teacher. So even if you had a fine arts, it was just dependent on what the teacher was. There wasn't always a choice between I would like general music or I would like art. It was more dictated by the staff that was assigned to the campus.
And the reason I'm asking is because this win time looks like something new, and I'm trying to understand what is win replacing it, right? Like if it's not replacing anything?
We're just securing time. What we've done is similar to a secondary schedule. We're designating periods of the day that certain things will happen. Before, fine arts really wasn't scheduled in during the day. That's why when the art teacher came in, when they could come and see the 3rd graders, if it was during science time, it was during science time.
Okay, that makes more sense. And so that makes me think about master scheduling and the work that we've been doing in the last year to kind of get to that. But I'm also wondering, what are we doing in the classroom in the sense of interventions and stuff like that? Because I know that our curriculum has been a mess for many years now, and we're working toward getting an actual curriculum in place. So I'm wondering what what does this new curriculum do in the sense of giving structure to the teacher to teach and have interventions throughout? Because what I'm worried about this, in this sense, is that students are not going to be doing anything for 45 minutes. It's just going to be kind of a free period, and there's not going to be a lot of intervention, and they're going to be losing out on PE time. But then I'm also going back to master scheduling. So let's say you do this opt-out thing, and 80% of people opt out, and they want to do PE. So what does that look like in terms of our scheduling our PE coaches and teachers? And then are we going to cut coaches? How does that work?
Yeah, this plan does not, there's no attempt to cut coaching positions, so I know that that's been something that's reported. It's a falsehood. It's not accurate information. And so master scheduling is just that. I mean, you've got to look at what schedule are you trying to accomplish and what staff do you have to deploy to make it work. And so, again, I'm going to go back to the win time. Part of the reason to include the win time was specifically to address skill gaps in our students. So if we think about our student outcomes, they're not where we'd like them to be. And so we can choose to do what we've always done and hope that it's going to make a difference and that it's, people dependent, or we can create a system, a structure, a schedule that really devotes time to skill-based intervention from a specialist in the area of literacy, a specialist in the area of math. So Tier 3 and maybe some Tier 2 students would have designated time during that win opportunity to receive skill-based from a teacher that's not their teacher of record, right? In other cases, you might have higher performing Tier 2 students who, in some cases, this happens already now in some of our schedules, where the teachers divide up the kids, and as a PLC, they've determined, well, my strength is this, my strength is that, your strength is this. So when we think about the unit that we've just, covered, I need, you're going to cover this information because these kids need more of this. You're going to cover this and you're going to cover this before we determine that we're going to go to the next phase of learning, of the learning cycle. And so that happens naturally in some cases, not in all cases. In many cases, you have campuses that are simply relying on kids coming before school or kids having to stay after school, to tutor them, not necessarily bridge skill gaps, right? And so that's some of the win time. But you also heard, opportunities for acceleration, and I use the example of if we haven't really done what we need to do to grow a student who's already high performing when they come to us, then there's an opportunity for us to accelerate there. I think that one of the concerns that you had at one point, Dr. Acevedo, was that we really don't have a well-developed system for us to address gifted and talented students. And so introducing this time within the school day allows us to address students who have been identified as gifted in a way that truly honors their giftedness, right? And then there may be a whole slew of other kids who are kind of right in the middle. And so, I think that's where campuses have some autonomy to determine the strengths of their staff and determine, is this an opportunity to take kids to the library so that they can experience makerspace? Is this an opportunity to extend their library time so that we can focus on literacy and allowing them to read? So there's a number of different opportunities during that win time for kids who may not need intervention in the way that I've just described, but that have other needs. It may be, and I spoke to a parent today, and she was, and she's a military parent, and she shared with me, sometimes there are things that happen in a military home that that make it difficult for kids at school. One of those being that it may be that their parent is about to be deployed, and all of a sudden there's a disruption in the home. And so when we can work with a family, or we may have a number of military families that are experiencing the same thing, this win opportunity gives us time to address that and to bring kids together with a counselor and to address that particular issue. Because we also know that we're working on a multi-tiered system of support to support kids not only with choice, but also their social emotional needs. But we need dedicated time to do that. And currently, we don't necessarily have that built into the schedule. So I think that there's limitless opportunities, which is why I want to emphasize that this is an opportunity for us to discover together, to figure out what works and what doesn't work, so that we can determine whether we want to move forward with introducing additional possibilities, or we have to make a determination about whether we abandon the plan or whatever we decide as a community together based on the information that we're able to gather over the course of this year.
And I guess I appreciate your explanation, and I think it's coming from a good place, and I understand what you came into and the strides you've been making to fix it, change it, disrupt it. I think what really stands out from this discourse that we've had here today is that win is a new thing, and I think that's the pilot of this whole thing. And for me, I don't think that should come at the cost of PE. I think win is a good thing because of everything you just explained, and you went above and beyond in doing that. But I would want to see it more like, okay, let's try the second option. PE is not affected, and let's just see if win is actually good, and let's try it for 4 days out of the week. You already said, I think, Dr. Gonzalez, that fine arts was already kind of a hit or miss, like we'll pull you out every 8th day or whatever, and that still gives you fine arts the way it is now, but now you're doing 4 win days, and now you're structuring the time. And so I think that makes more sense in this first year to see if the concerns that I kind of brought up on, like, okay, is this just going to be 45 minutes of kids not doing anything, or they're not going to meet this time, or I'd rather do that. I think that's a safer route than sacrificing a day of PE just to do it for 5 days. Like, I think the 4 day, I think that's a good compromise. And I guess the second thing is, are we voting on this in 2 weeks?
Right, no. So I guess what I would share with you is that option A, we're providing option A and option B to principals so that they can engage their communities and make a determination about the option that best suits their community, so that with either option, PE has the opportunity to remain intact for 5 days, right? And the reason that we're giving the principals the autonomy to choose option A or option B is because if you're depending on whether you're a large campus, a medium-sized campus, a small campus, I don't want to box in principals and create, a bigger issue. I want to give them the flexibility, to determine as they think about their schedule, as they listen to their community, which of these options is, and I think that, Dr. Gonzalez, can you give some specific information about some direction that we've given to principals as they work to determine option A or option B for their campus?
Yes, they're waiting for us to finish this presentation, because as soon as we're done and in any changes that we need or any other directions you'd like us to share with them, we're sending this to them so they can use it not only with their faculties to get some feedback from the campus improvement teams, their instructional leadership teams, but also most have open houses either starting as early as tomorrow and Thursday, that we want them to present this to parents and to really message out that this is important. It's good to come to open house. You get to meet the teacher. You get to, to pick up the school supplies. You can tour but also we want them to spend designated time really going over with parents about the option and getting their feedback before making any kind of decision whether A seems to fit the needs of their community or B is where they'll be heading. So they're just waiting for the sort of final product. They saw it this morning. We would not let them have it until we'd had a chance to get the feedback from you, and then we'll be rolling it out to them to share with parents, with staff, and making that decision probably, early next week. We want to give them time to find the best fit for their community, their students, and their staff.
So, and one of the things that I'd like to call us back to is that when we shared next steps, I know that there's been discussion about the August 15th board meeting. I would caution us to come to any sort of firm decision-making about the future that soon. I do believe that as we've shared the type of engagement that we'll be introducing over the course of the fall semester, using our SHAC committee to help develop recommendations and learn from this experience as it unfolds, and then bringing recommendations with possible policy implications to the board thereafter is what I'm recommending as a superintendent.
Trustee Beals?
Sorry. Yes, a lot of my questions were already answered, but as I'm thinking about this WIN program, I guess I like the idea that everybody has an option, but I am thinking about our special ed kids. What kind of options do they have? Or, my kids, along with, kids around that age who are elementary aged kids, being in a classroom all day long, taking away some of that PE time when they need to get their wiggles out, they need to get the vitamin D outside, they need to, have a change of scenery instead of being in a classroom all day long or on tablets, them needing to get, their wiggles out. I think a lot of that would help them be able to focus more educationally wise, so how would that affect the special ed kids? Do they have the same options? And, but like I said, a lot of these questions were already answered.
Well, but I think that you bring up a great point, Ms. Beals, because, as I mentioned gifted, I failed to mention special education, and this really does give us more opportunities, if you will, to really address some of the unique needs of our special education students. So, thank you for bringing that into the conversation. But I do believe that this presents significantly more opportunities for us to meet the needs of our special education students, whether they be physical needs or specific, instructional needs where they need more time and support. Because when we give kids more time and more support, then learning becomes the constant. When we don't offer additional time and support for kids, then learning becomes the variable, and that's not what we want. We want learning to be the constant.
Thank you.
So first off, I just want to say thank you to this team. I know that we've kind of been through the thick of it for the last week and a half or so, and I know that you guys did a lot of work over this weekend to try and catch up to where we are today. I haven't been shy about this. I've been saying this. I do think that the district has made missteps up to this point in sharing this information and getting the information out to the community and asking for that feedback. But the one thing that I do respect is what you're seeing is this is a district that does listen. We received a lot of feedback. We set up a lot of community meetings. Any interaction that someone called me and gave me information, I would share it with the superintendent, who then would share it with staff. And out of that comes this new plan. And so I just want to ask some clarifying questions just to make sure that we're all on the same page. So the first one is, on these two models, option A and option B, there is an option for parents to have 5 days of PE in both models, correct?
Absolutely. Option A, they would just opt out of fine arts on the 5th day, but both of them have the opportunity to have 5 days of PE, and all of them have 20 minutes of recess, and we'll do our best to always make sure it's before lunch. And I know exactly what you said. During COVID, we had to balance a little, and some hadn't completely shifted back, but before lunch is what we're working for.
And with option A, the flex, I'm going to call it flex time. I'm going to say the win is the flex time there because that would be the one that would either be PE or fine arts, correct? That's kind of where we're taking that
That's
space
option
from?
B, absolutely.
Option B,
All
sorry.
we've done is we've secured PE is 5 days, and then the fine arts then rotates within the win.
Then the next question I know, because we talked about this, I have kids in the district. I recently had a fifth grader who opted out of the orchestra option. And at that point, it was kind of what we were talking about, that free period where it wasn't really structured. It was based on what was available on that campus. Will this for sure be structured to where we're actually seeing dividends off of our investment? Are we coordinating with Mr. Barrazas and the Fine Arts Department to ensure that this is, qualified, certified teachers teaching these fine arts programs?
Absolutely. That, and also, as we mentioned, it's an opportunity for us to provide programming for every student's need, whether it's a GT or just trying to expose them more to maybe STEM-based. Librarian has time to do things outside with the traditional library type lessons. It could be makerspace. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with what makerspace is. Kids love it. It's like a green screen. They go in, they do creative work that they can actually create videos, music, all kinds of high-tech type interactive activities. So there's those opportunities. There's the opportunity for, it could be, we're going to do 3 weeks of coding, or we're going to do 3 weeks of musical theater, and just with teachers who are, depending on the students, the amount of students. As we build through this, it will be very much, student ideas, teacher ideas, and parent ideas. Like, we'd like to see more of X, Y, and Z, and then we can build that 3-week rotation and use the win time to do it.
I think that we also have learned from working through after-school programs. We have a lot of partners that we work with, that we can contract with, that the contract doesn't always have to be through an after-school program. It could be that we contract with people. I think that we've worked with Creative Kids in the past, and so it may be an opportunity for us to bring Creative Kids into the school day, and we've not explored that option because we've not built in dedicated time. And so I do want to address, and thank you, Mr. Adebali, for bringing that to the forefront, because I do want to stress to the community, those of you who are watching, to the board, that, we are very committed to partnering with you and to creating a culture of transparency. We did not do that well in this situation. But I will tell you that we are listening. We're flexible. We're ready to respond in a way that honors what our parents are telling us. Now, in some cases, we're going to engage the community. We're going to make recommendations. But I think in this particular case, if I reflect, as good leaders do, some of the opposition did not come from the removal of PE. Much of the opposition came because parents felt like they were not engaged. And so as we think about moving forward and introducing or entertaining any future change, this is a learning experience for us as a team. And we'll learn. You often hear me talk to students, and we talk about failing forward. And sometimes you've got to, make mistakes along the way so that you learn and you produce a better product. And I think in this case, it's been a great learning experience for us. We hear the community loud and clear, but it really challenged us to produce a better product. And I think that's what we're delivering to the community today, a better product than what we started with.
And there's just 2 more points I'll make really quick, Trustee Cuellar. So the next one is just access. So I just really appreciate it. I know that this board's focused a lot on equity, and especially when that's the opportunities that exist for children. Recognizing that not every family has access to before school or after school transportation. So kind of what you get in that day is what you get. So you can't necessarily access those robotics classes or those other opportunities that other kids may get. Socioeconomics, I can't pay for lessons after class, you can't join this team. So I think that this program will help supplement a lot of that and introduce earlier on to children what that path of success may be, that unique path, which will then solidify, I think, our fine arts programs, as well as our academics programs through middle school and high school. So I really do appreciate that, because I know that this board's talked profusely about equity through opportunity. And then I just have to say, I know there's 5 of us on this board that are parents, and I got to tell you, the reason I think I had heartburn with this because I felt like the parents, that conversation was left out. And what I'm seeing in this new plan, this new iteration, is that the parents are allowed to have that conversation with their student and then work with the school to kind of make that pathway for them. And I mean, we've talked to my daughter several times. You know, she needs to be in PE. You know, I know where her, I don't want to say deficiencies, or where her areas of improvement are, and that physicality is where she really needs to spend time. And so I, as a parent, can work with the campus to find that solution forward, and that makes me extremely happy because while I respect and appreciate the 7 hours a day that they, you know, the educators spend with my kids, working with them makes me feel a lot, you know, more of a team and a part of the conversation than it being made in a silo and complications like that. And then the last clarity I have here was, I know that there's that PowerPoint presentation that's gone out in social media, and there's that screenshot that kind of says that we're going down to 2 days or 1 days by X year. I just want to get some clarification. What I'm hearing is that we're going to go to the shack. We're going to be working with our stakeholders. We're going to be working with our administrators, parents, you name it. We're going to talk. We're going to have that conversation, and that's where that plan will be developed, and that's going to be the path forward.
Absolutely, and that's the danger of, you know, taking screenshots, posting things, because it takes conversations completely out of context and only serves to deliver misinformation and to confuse the community. Again, I opened this presentation by sharing that this is an opportunity for us to come together as a community to deliver on the promise of a better future for our kids, or a brighter future for our kids. And so, you know, and I believe that we can do that. So when we have situations where things are taken out of context, it serves to divide us, and that's problematic as we think about, you know, doing things and taking actions in service of our children. So yes, an early iteration did include, you know, something to that effect, but it was a very early iteration with a caveat that we would engage the community before we made any firm decisions about what we would do beyond year 1. And so I think that we've talked to you today about how we plan to determine what recommendations we bring to this board and to the community as a whole for anything beyond year 1, as we think about year 2 and going forward. And that remains to be seen. We'll have to listen and hear from our community so that they can help us shape and formulate this plan.
Trustee Cuellar?
Yeah, sorry. Just one point of clarification, and I might have to get our legal department and Ms. Collins to verify that. But in looking at the code, the Texas Education Code, Section 28.002I or 1, the school district determines for any particular grade below 6 that requiring moderate or vigorous daily physical activity is impractical due to scheduling concerns or other factors, which in this case it might be those wind periods, right? The district may, as an alternative, require a student in the grade level to participate in moderate or vigorous physical activity for at least 135 minutes during each school week. So just to know that we have that, you know, just so that we're sticking with the code, we're following the law and
We
those
far
legal parameters.
exceeded, actually,
Yes.
with
Well-
our, between the recess
Yes,
and with
sure.
the 4 to 5 days, we're at 325 minutes a week that a
Yes.
student has activity,
Yeah,
physical
and
activity.
that was just going off of, I guess, with option B, K through 4, where you would maybe have 4 days of WIN and 1 day of fine arts, which would that cut out all
Not at all,
PE
because you
time?
still had 5 days of PE, so you had 45 minutes every day, which is 3 hours and 45 minutes of PE, and then you have
Okay.
the 20 minutes of recess every day, which is
Maybe
another hour and 40 minutes, so it's
Okay.
almost like 5 hours of physical
Okay.
activity between recess and PE.
Okay.
And I think that, just to your point, Mr. Qued, and I think it's important for the community to know that it is a minimum of 135 minutes a week. However, even if, let's just say that we didn't have any recess time, God forbid that ever be the case, we're still 75 minutes over the allotted PE time, even taking 1 day of PE away, right? So,
Yeah, maybe I was reading, I guess, that slide wrong, but the 4 days of WIN and 1 day of fine arts, so that's not scratching
That
out
is, it's
PE
like you have
altogether?
first period, you have
Yes.
PE for 45 minutes. Second period, you have WIN for 45 minutes. And 1 day a week, WIN becomes the fine arts.
Okay.
So PE is never
Never
touched
touched.
at
Okay.
all.
And that still falls in line with our local policy?
Yes, sir.
Actually, it exceeds our
Okay.
local policy.
Okay, thank you so much.
So that's the last thing I want to say is Ms. Saavedra has committed to a community meeting this Saturday at Tom Lee, 9 a.m., which is August 5th. I'd encourage anyone of interest that would like to learn more about this program, parents, teachers, whoever it may be. I do have to shout out a District 5 resident who's been helping me profusely with this, Ms. Tafoya, who's sitting out there in the back. She's done a fantastic job corralling and bringing some valuable input to this group to make really tough decisions that are going to affect 50,000 students in our district. So there is that opportunity. Again, that's this Saturday, August 5th, 9 a.m. at Tom Lee. And I have a flyer that I can share out to all the trustees if that's something that you guys would be interested in sharing with your community. And then I do think that this is, since this is new, introducing WIN, as well as I think the misinformation that was shared at the forefront of this program implementation, that we may, as a district, may want to look at doing community meetings just to clarify that. Because, you know, we have a couple of opportunities. We have the festival the fiestas on Friday and open house coming up in the next couple of days. But I think we're gonna have a lot more feedback in the next couple of days.
Right, and I also believe that there's opportunities that are built in within each campus. I mean, I'm open to meeting with PTA leaders, open to meeting with, hosting coffees with the principal at campuses so that we can have parents come in and have a conversation. So the team is committed to creating as many opportunities for parents to get their questions answered as possible, so.
Okay, so thank you, staff. That concludes item 2A. This will bring us to our consent agenda. Does any trustee want to take any items off of consent?
Three H2.
3H2.
Yeah.
Okay,
Excuse me, can you tell me which one that was again?
3H2.
Okay.
Okay, so we will move forward with the consent. We do have a speaker, two speakers on item 3E. So I'll pass over to Ms. Trustee Hernandez.
Statement for introducing the public comment segment of a board meeting. The district is the local government body charged with serving the educational needs of all school children in our district, and board meetings must be focused on meeting this charge. In meeting that charge, the district board meetings are public meetings under the Texas Open Meetings Act to conduct the business of the district. They are not, however, meetings of the public. Therefore, all persons in attendance are expected to display civility and decorum, that is, respect for other persons without the use of insulting, profane, threatening, or abusive language. Public comment will not be used for personal attacks. In addition, you are directed to the district's complaint procedures in the board policy regarding employee, student, parent, or public comments or complaints. The Deputy Superintendent of Administration is in attendance if you wish to discuss a matter with him or her. Please note that during the public forum, specific actual or factual information or resuscitation of existing policy may be furnished in response to inquiries. However, the board may not deliberate or decide on any subject that is not posted on its agenda. Thank you.
So the first speaker we have is Mr. Rossmore.
And we'll have 3 minutes, am I correct? 3 minutes to speak. Mhm.
President Arabali, board members, Ms. Saavedra, my name is Ross Moore, president of Paso.
Can you hold, Mr. Morrow? I don't think that your microphone is working, and can we restart the timer to 3 minutes, please?
We'll fix it.
No problem. Okay, let's try this one again. Board President Irabali, board members, Ms. Ayavader, my name is Ross Moore, President El Paso AFT. Before I begin, because I see 2 new trustees and a whole lot of new folks out there in administration, I need to show you one thing. I'm wearing sandals today to show you that I don't have cloven hooves. That being said, trustees, I'm going to ask you to vote no or at least amend this item. You have 108 openings at elementary schools right now. That was posted this morning on HR's page. Now, a few years back, a blanket approval is not what is needed. Now, a few years back, a superintendent tried to get that blanket approval, and this worries me. Trustee Call came up with a really good compromise on that, and it was put in the motion, setting a 25-to-1 ceiling. In other words, at 23 or 24, yes, there's a blanket approval. At 25, though, district had to bring it to the board for approval. It worries me that I agree with them. This will lead to larger classes. This will lead, when this new curriculum comes in, I'm worried about the effects it's going to have on student outcomes. Next thing is, God, twice in one meeting. I agree with Trustee Call and share his concerns about downtime, too much screen time, whether it's structured or unstructured. 2019, we were starting a campaign on more face time with teachers, less screen time. Pandemic stepped in, messed everything up. Even today, that is more so. That human contact, that interaction is what kids need to be taught. That is what I'm asking. So I'm going to ask you, if you're not going to vote no on this, at least put that 25-to-1 cap in place. And it really does worry me, Trustee Call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For item 3C, Norma de la Rosa. Oh, 3E.
Good afternoon, Mr. Irabali, members of the board, Ms. Ayavedra. I am Norma de la Rosa, President of El Paso Teachers Association. I address you today in opposition of approving the class waivers for grades pre-K through 4th grade for the following reasons. If you currently look at the number of vacancies in this district as of today, almost 160, that does not bode well for this district if by now the district has not been able to fill those vacancies. That question was asked at our last consultation meeting. The response given was that the district had a healthy supply of substitutes. What a way to start a school year. What happens if there are really not enough substitutes to cover these classes or don't want to cover these classes? It should have never come to this point of asking for waivers, but this administration has put campus principals in a very tight bind. They have decimated their campus budgets. They have calculated the number of FTEs to the bare minimum to get to this point now that they will ask for waivers or increase class sizes at the lower levels to the point that you as a board need to seriously ask yourselves, is this the best this district can do to provide a fair and equitable education for all of our students when they are crowded into classrooms of 30? By allowing administration to apply for these waivers, and the answer as to why is always the same. It's always done if the waiver needs to be applied. The end result will be this: teachers will not be able to teach, students will not be able to learn, and at some point, parents will get fed up with their children being in overcrowded rooms, and teachers will have had enough trying to juggle large class sizes and leave. The vacancies that are currently posted should be a red flag to you as the trustees who are obligated to provide the best for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Collins, I just, if we need some clarification on the data that was presented, can we ask staff to come up and provide clarification?
As part of the discussion for that agenda item.
Yes, because they are both speaking to the item on the agenda, and it's not public forum where it would be, because we are posted.
Okay.
You are posted for discussion on this item.
Okay, so Ms. Saavedra, I know that we've heard a lot about the fill rate and the vacancies. I don't know if you guys have that data and you can share it with us.
Yes, Ms. Cortez, can you share with us, as of today, what the fill rate is for El Paso ISD and the number of vacancies by area? And I understand while she's coming to the podium that although our first choice would not be to put a substitute in front of students in a classroom, and many times we start the school year doing that. And we've got the healthiest sub pool that we've had in a number of years in El Paso ISD this year.
Good afternoon, Ms. Saavedra and members of the board. So yes, as you mentioned, Ms. Saavedra, we do have a healthy pool of substitutes that we've worked on for the last 2 years. It is not our priority to go to, but we do definitely plan to have that pool ready to go. But in terms of vacancies, we've worked throughout the year on our recruitment plan to have those positions filled. So we are currently at 98% filled for FTE teacher positions. And what that represents is we have 11 middle school vacancies, 12 pre-K 8, and 16 high school vacancies, and 64 elementary vacancies. So the difference that maybe you see on the website is those are your ongoing postings. However, we're processing and we're filling positions as they come in so that the website information is not always going to equate what we have internally that we're processing. So throughout the summer, I would say that we've been on an average about 2% increase every week or so as we've been processing those vacancies. So last week we were at 97%, this week we're at 98%.
So, Ms. Cortez, we've got 64 elementary vacancies for how many elementary campuses?
That is 54 elementary campuses.
So it's on average one or more, but not more than 2 vacancies per campus, maybe?
Yes.
On
we're
average.
averaging, on the average, one vacancy per elementary. On the high end, what we're seeing at around 3 campuses, about 4 vacancies.
And in this week's board update, I can provide the board a spreadsheet by campus of the vacancies and the content areas, for every campus.
And I would like to emphasize, for the last 2 or 3 years, we've actually seen a positive rate on that fill rate. Last year, we opened the school year with about 160 vacancies, and this year, we're at 106 vacancies.
Ms. Macias, I would like you to address the protocol that we go through as we consider class size waivers when classes become 20 at the number of 23 or 24. Can you address that for the board,
Really quick,
please?
Ms. Saavedra, I think that we're going to go ahead and pull the item because there's going to be some questions from the board as well.
Okay,
So if we can just approve the consent and then we'll just go directly into that, that's fine. So I'll,
Stay up here.
yeah, if anyone has a motion, what's being asked to be pulled is 3E and 3H2.
I move to approve consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that will take us to item E. Ms. Macias, please. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
President Irubali, Ms. Saavedra, members of the board. One thing I do want to clarify, and we did provide that in your supported document, is that we do have a 25, just as it was mentioned, in pre-K through 4th grade. If at any point we receive 25 students, after balancing, it's an emergency add. So what you're approving is this will allow our team to submit to TA, and this is from TEC 25.112, which is a maximum class size exemption. We're able to submit that for any class pre-K through 4th grade with 23 or 24 students. So the 25 that you all had submitted or approved in the past is within our recommendation. It is an automatic add. So there are no campuses in pre-K through fourth grade that have more than 24 students.
Yeah, sorry, so this is, I guess, like, kind of aging myself on the board, but this is, I guess, my 5th school year that I'm starting as a board member. And this was something that I always pulled because we couldn't, like, I didn't trust the administration to do what's right, and that's why I didn't pull it this time. And so I'm glad to hear what you just said, and I think that's a good process in place, because I think there was a lot of heartburn and hesitation historically with this item. And so thank you for that clarification, that's all.
And one thing I do want to reassure is we created a Tableau dashboard, so it's an automatic. Once it gets to 25, that email is immediately sent to our HR department, our school leadership. Those conversations are had with our principals. That way, if they have to balance, they can do any balances. And again, once it hits 25, it's an automatic add of an FTE.
And I would add that the expectation is for the Department of School Leadership to be accessing that dashboard and to be monitoring so that we're prepping and we're tapping into hires in anticipation that a class might get to 25.
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Call?
Yeah, and just to give credit where credit is due, that definitely was Dr. Acevedo that was leading that charge years ago when we created that policy. I think, as I recall correctly, just for the sake of, getting the record straight, I think the compromise that I came up with is doing a mandatory add at 25 so that we could, we can keep an eye on it that way. Now, it's been a little while, but I just wanted to make sure we're as board members, we're still notified anytime there's a 23 or 24 student classroom, right? There's a reporting mechanism there.
What we could do is we could send it to you all on a monthly basis. What we do is we send it to TA. Once we get that 23 or 24, we send the recommended waiver. And then what we do is, at that point, I know that in the past, we've been doing it on a monthly basis as far as identifying and sharing with you all how many. The parent also receives notification, that's part of the protocol. If their child is sitting in any pre-K through fourth grade classroom that has 23 or 24 students, the parent also receives notification that they're in a classroom that has received an approved waiver. Last year, we submitted 66 total for the school year.
Okay. All right, yeah, and if we can just make sure that the trustees are notified there, and I'm thrilled and gratified to hear that the policy that we came up with years ago, doing an automatic add at 25 is still in place, so thank you.
Yes, we do it the last Friday of the month, if that's okay. As soon as we hit send to TA, we will provide you a weekly update or a board update on that last Friday of the month.
Trustee Hernandez?
I believe the majority of my question was answered. However, so I just need some clarification. So this is sent to the TEA at the beginning of the school year and periodically, you say?
Yes, anytime a classroom is at 23 or 24, we have 30 days to submit to TA for that approval. With the approval that you give us today, it allows us to send it to TA, to the commissioner for approval. So we do it monthly, and that's our ASAP team. Every month, the last Friday, they review the information. They ensure to communicate with school leadership, with the principals, and anybody that is at 23 or 24, we submit the information, and then we get the information to the parents of any family that is sitting within a classroom with 23 and 24. That way, I feel very confident that on a monthly basis, the last Friday of the month, we could provide you with an updated report. And as I mentioned, last year, we submitted 66 of those waivers. Sometimes they don't stay at 23 or 24 the entire school year, but by policy, anytime they actually receive 23, we have 30 days to report it to TA for that waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Macias. Then this is what we're approving right now, is just allowing us that, like, giving us the opportunity to have it just in case we need it.
Yes, and that opens on August 25th. So by giving us that approval, then we will monitor, and anytime we have that exception, we will submit. And then, of course, we will be in communication with you all in our community.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I second.
That's a motion by trustee Call, second by Dr. Acevedo. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that will bring us to item 3H2. We do have a speaker on that item.
For item 3H2, Norma de la Rosa.
Good afternoon, Mr. Irobali, members of the board, Ms. Saavedra. I am Norma de la Rosa, President of El Paso Teachers Association. I address you this afternoon to urge you to not approve the purchase of the Kickstart program at a cost of $163,500. I'm sure you haven't done your research in this program, but I have. How interesting that this program is being introduced to the district, a program that the superintendent is very familiar with. In the Southeast region alone, 15 of the 35 schools in that region, almost half of them are in Fort Bend ISD. This program is a nonprofit organization developed by Chuck Norris and his wife and is designed to build strong moral character through martial arts. Really? Martial arts? Character is taught through the program and was designed by Mr. Norris as a program to give middle school students tools needed to succeed, to support necessary to resolve conflicts, avoid participation in gangs, resist negative peer pressure, and so on. It also teaches responsibility and character development. There is no curriculum for it, but my biggest concerns are these. Why are we paying for a program when EPISD already has a program that does exactly the same thing, raise up the bar? It is an elective. There is no fee to take this class, whereas students who get into this program are charged a $75 fee, and that is on their website. Is this intended to take the place of our physical education classes at the middle school? And what will happen to those teachers, because this program is taught by their own instructors, not our EPISD staff? How will these people be paid, and where is the money coming from? This disruption of our solid physical education program is a disservice to EPISD, the students, the teachers in our community. What is happening here is looking like the disruption happening in Houston ISD per Mike Miles. Ms. Saavedra, EPISD is not Fort Bend ISD, and we don't want to look like Fort Bend ISD. We are EPISD. We are unique in all ways, and we don't need to look like anyone else. My last question is this. In looking at the list of schools, 2 are already on that list to get this program, the only 2 schools in West Texas, Charles Murphy and Navarrete. The mystery being, did they volunteer or were they forced to have this program, even before the program and funding have been approved? Since they are being used as the inaugural campuses to implement this program, will Mr. Norris be invited to EPISD to open it up?
Thank you, Ms.
We don't need this
Rosa.
program. It's a waste of money this district does not have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Dr. Acevedo, you're the individual that pulled the item, so I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I guess after Ms. De La Rosa spoke, I have a few more questions, and because my initial thought was this kind of sounded a lot like Raise Up the Bar, because we have that at Ross, and I really enjoyed seeing that program in action. And so that was one of the things when I saw that program a few years ago, just like, why aren't we not doing this district-wide? Because I believe it started at Ross, and I was just really impressed with it. And so this kind of sounded a little similar to it. And then I kind of also wanted to give you an opportunity to address where the thoughts came from, the Fort Bend issue, stuff like that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Acevedo. And, what I would share is that I'm very impressed with the Raise Up the Bar program. What I would initially say is that this is another opportunity, but here at the middle school level, to diversify the options for our students. And yes, As the Chief Academic Officer in Fort Bend ISD, this was something that we prioritized for our middle school students as a character-building opportunity. Through martial arts, students do develop a sense of confidence, and some of the underlying benefits, it serves as, an anti-bullying program, if you will. But prior to my experience in Fort Bend ISD, I was a middle school principal in Pflugerville ISD, where I was the first principal to introduce that program to my middle school. And it was a game changer for my middle school. Parents came to me over and over thanking me for providing their students an opportunity to find a niche in middle school where they couldn't find that in sports, they couldn't find that in band or in fine arts, but martial arts was something that really created a connection for them at the middle school. And although connection is important for our kids in every grade level, it becomes significantly important for them to develop connections to the school at the middle school level. And so this provided them a connection and an opportunity for them to thrive. Our vision in El Paso ISD is to create the systems and the conditions that inspire and empower our students to thrive. And I believe that bringing Kickstart to our school district diversifies the opportunities for our students to find their way, to find their place, and to build their confidence. It does not take away from Raise the Bar. It's an additive approach. Yes, the instructors are trained by Kickstart, and the school district does pay their salary. We've been having a conversation about introducing Kickstart since the beginning of the school year. It's been, it's a budgeted expense. When we discussed bringing Kickstart to the school district, we thought about campuses that might benefit from that. Navarrete was one in specifically. We've had a number of discipline issues at Navarrete. And so we believe that this is one of those situations where it's not teaching kids martial arts so that they know how to fight. It's teaching kids martial arts because it creates a sense of discipline for them. They learn techniques. The program serves to weave in character building components that allow students to understand, how do I interact with a peer that may be, that's showing signs of bullying. And so not only that, as a result of Kickstart, they do create performance teams, and those performance teams then, again, create an opportunity for kids to be on the stage. If they're not a band kid, if they're not an athletic kid, they do have a place where they get to showcase their talent in martial arts. And when my experience was, and I can't guarantee that that'll be the experience here in El Paso ISD, but as a principal at Dulles, not at Dulles, at Dessau Middle School in Pflugerville ISD, when we introduced the program to our middle school, our first belt ceremony, Chuck Norris did come to the school and present the belts to the students. So I do have experience with the program. I feel like it's a great opportunity and a great introduction to diversify programming for our students at the middle school level.
Sorry. And I'm seeing this is ESSER funding, so if this gets approved, how are we going to sustain it? And then the second thing was, is this with PE being such a hot topic in the last few weeks, is this a replacement for PE, or how is that integrated into the system?
Right. I'll open and then I'll give it to you, Glenn. So right now, it's my understanding that it's being introduced as an elective option. And so because as we work through the process, there may be certification issues that we need to work out. Should we choose to entertain Kickstart as an opportunity for our students in 6th grade to earn their PE time?
Yes, ma'am, that's 100% correct. Currently, it's scheduled to be just an elective, part of the enrichment opportunities for our students. It is not replacing their PE, so they would still have their PE credit, 6th, 7th, or 8th grade with their certified PE instructor, and then they would have the opportunity to select Kickstart as an elective course. Another point to clarify is that there is no charge for students. EPISD has worked with Kickstart, and part of the program fee already includes the registration fee for students. So we would have the capacity to bring in up to 175 students in year one at no cost to any child, to any family, et cetera. Part of the funding then is also through ESSER and through DODEA. So we're utilizing our grant funds in an effective manner so that it's not negatively impacting our district, but instead we're utilizing those funds in a very intelligent way.
Trustee Call?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with Ms. De La Rosa here. And this wasn't even so much something that Ms. Saavedra, took from Fort Bend ISD and is sort of hoisting on us. I'm actually the one behind closed doors that kept asking her over and over again, when are we gonna do the Kickstart thing? When are we gonna do the Kickstart thing? And the reason I'm so passionate about that is that I've seen the difference that martial arts has made in the lives of many kids, and especially my own children. Coming out of COVID, my kids, particularly one of them, were struggling terribly, in a lot of different ways, mental health wise. And I'm fortunate enough to have the means to get them into martial arts, Taekwondo specifically. And I have seen a world of difference that it's made for my children. And I've been thinking this whole time, why am I so privileged, and I don't typically like that word, but I want this for all the kids in El Paso. Like our PE teachers are wonderful, and those coaches do a great job. I love walking through a campus and seeing how the kids revere their PE teachers. And, they may not know who I am or who Miss Saavedra is, but they know who their PE coach is, and they high five, they love it. But this is something simply that our PE coaches are not qualified to be doing. Martial arts is a very unique thing. Like, it requires a unique skill set, a unique training. And I love this. I hope that at some point we can get this on every campus and have every kid the opportunity to do martial arts. And even if this does sort of bleed into some PE time, I can't think of a better way to do PE than martial arts. It's extremely physical, and it's great for mental health. And who knows what we can do in the future with our PE coaches getting certified with this. Like there's a lot of different options here. As far as Mr. Norris in particular, I'd be thrilled if Chuck Norris came to our school district for our first belt testing. Whatever his political beliefs may or may not be, I think that's totally irrelevant to this nonprofit organization that he's been kind enough to set up to help out with the kids. Yeah, and I think also that this is a huge PR coup for us as a district. We're always working on getting more students into our district with our demographics that are working against us. I think giving parents and kids more options, within our school district is what's going to attract kids, and I think this Kickstart thing is huge. Just wait till if anybody's skeptical, just wait till you see the difference that it makes in the lives of kids, and you'll be a believer.
Well, I would offer one more piece of information as I know the way the nonprofit works in terms of instructors. The vast majority of the instructors that are part of the Kickstart program are students that were part of Kickstart programs, and they were at-risk youth, lost, couldn't find their way, and they were part of Kickstart programs, and they stayed with martial arts through adulthood, and then became Kickstart instructors and are now giving back to children and to students the way they, the way that they were given, opportunities to come into their own. So vast majority of their instructors are students who were part of the Kickstart program, at-risk youth, and are now instructors for their association.
Trustee Beals?
I just have a quick comment. I love that we're introducing this with martial arts. I have a couple of my kids that are in martial arts, and one of them being my son who has autism, ADHD, and severe anxiety. Being a kid who, is not a band student, who is not, into art or any of those programs, I have seen a huge difference in his confidence and his respect towards others and adults. Seeing my kids respond with yes ma'am, no sir, has been amazing. Martial arts has been really great for these kids to build their confidence and independence and, feel like they belong. So I am excited to see this. If it goes through, I'm excited to see how it affects these kids. I'm sure it's going to be very positive.
Trustee Hernandez?
Not so much in regards to this item, but for the sake of our new trustees, when the staff, and the majority of you all have done that, when you come up to the podium, if you could please identify yourself with your title, so the new trustees know who's speaking on behalf of this, or whatever item we have listed, please. Thank you.
So then I just have a couple closing, comments. I guess the first one is I'm actually quite thankful that you do have experience outside of the El Paso ISD system, because I do feel like you can bring those concepts and ideas that maybe be foreign to EPIC, to that maybe El Paso County. And so I just want to be clear. I will clear the record. This seems more that you saw success in the program and less that there is some kind of benefit for you bringing them to El Paso. And I kind of don't appreciate, I consider it an insinuation. And then the other point I want to make is this really addresses two things. It's been the theme of this district today is physical activity and opportunity and choice. And what this does for me is this gives kids that maybe would never have that opportunity to go to a martial arts studio and participate in that. And now they get that in the school structure. It's not an impact to the parents that don't have transportation. They have it right there at school, and I think that's fantastic. And then, again, as we talk towards physical education, this is another great opportunity for those kids to get that much-needed opportunity. So unless there's any other comments or questions, I will entertain a motion.
Sorry, real quick.
Trustee Cuellar.
In terms of the budget, that funding that's there, that's going to cover the pay for the instructors, all the necessary equipment, supplies, everything like that. Will the students have to pay to purchase any of the Kickstart promotional gear or anything like that? Okay.
Glenn Nathan, Assistant Superintendent, Student Services. Thank you for that reminder, ma'am. No, sir, they will not have to pay for anything. There is a registration fee that the program typically charges. In other locations, that includes the gi, your karate uniform, belts during belt ceremonies, training materials, equipment. The price that you see in front of you is all inclusive, so that students pay zero to participate in this program. It's just a matter of them signing up, choosing to participate, and having the opportunity then to engage in this character-building program.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
My only concern that is left, I think I've seen trustees call passion for martial arts over the last year or so, and I think I've really enjoyed hearing his thoughts on it, but my concern is that we bring in a program like this that sounds really awesome and it's doing a lot for the kids, and then we're using ESSER funding, and then what happens? And I would hate to pull it from the kids after a year. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from, where I'm kind of hesitant to support it only because of the financial thing, because there's so many other things that we want to pay for, and I'm like, okay, we're going to add something new. ESSER funding ends, and then what happens?
Dr. Acevedo, Daniel Vasquez, Director of Federal and State Programs and Fund Development. So as was mentioned a little bit earlier, this is part of now the DODEA 22 grant, if approved. The DODEA 22 grant, which you approved last year, is an expansion program to raise up the bar. So that grant is called Raise the Bar. So since we had success with Raise Up the Bar at so many campuses, we took that program to the Department of Defense, shared the success, and said we wanted to amplify it, align it to curriculum, align it to more of what takes place during the instructional day. So with me in the audience is Lisa Mendez. She's our DODEA program manager, and she oversees all DODEA grant activity. So at Navarrete, there is funding for the next 4 years for this program. Now, what makes this ideal and unique under the DODEA funding apparatus is that it will allow us to test it, make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to complement those other activities under Raise the Bar or Raise Up the Bar, and give us an opportunity to kind of work things out or make it fit appropriately for the district. One of the considerations for the DODEA grant is that at the end of every year, we have a showcase where we highlight what our kids were doing. So because it is martial arts based, it would align beautifully to our Fort Bliss EPISD games. So some of our kids would be doing the strength and conditioning, the X game type things with their parents and with other members of the Fort Bliss community. And then some others could do the martial arts demonstrations. And then to your point, yes, one of the campuses does have ESSER funding allowed to, appropriated for it. But by putting one campus on DODEA, that gives us a 4-year window to test that. And then based on need or based on the success of the program, we can identify additional resources, Title IV, possibly local, to continue it based on the success, and then develop an expansion program district-wide.
I guess, and then that's, I appreciate that explanation, because I think the Raise Up the Bar testimony, it was what was missing, where you kind of used that to say, hey, we're doing this, give us money to do a more structured thing. That's basically what we're landing at today, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
President Irabali, before you take a vote, I just want to make a correction to the motion. I know Ms. De La Rosa mentioned it was $163,000. It's actually $159,500, and it's for a 2-year period, 1-year period with 2 options to extend, correct? So I just want to make sure that, because the motion actually had 3 options to extend in it, but during the review of the contract and going through that process, that's where it landed.
Okay, so do you need them to read out the motion when they do make it, or can we just?
I would, if
Yeah.
somebody wanted to make a motion where they have my corrections, where it's $159,500, I mean, you don't have to actually state the amount, but if you can refer to Ms. Collins's remarks. And
So,
but whatever is easier for the trustees. And it's 2 additional extensions.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my best here. I move that the board approve the expenditures to purchase services and supplies from Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation, DBA Kickstart Kids, utilizing Central Texas Purchasing Alliance, Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District Contract 2022 10-31 in the amount of not to exceed $159,500 through June 30th, 2024, with the option to extend an additional 3 years, 12 months.
2 years.
2 years, 12 months at a time, subject to review and approval of the contract documents by district's legal counsel.
I second.
so I have a first by trustee Call, a second by trustee Hernandez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The item passes 6-0 with trustee Hanani not present in attendance. That is consent, so that takes us to item 4A, discuss and take appropriate action on application submittal to public schools and military installations program for Bliss Elementary School.
Yes, thank you, President Irabali and trustees. You know, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, we came to you as a board, and this was prior to Ms. Beals and Mr. Cuellar being sworn in. We shared with you the prospect of the Department of Defense granting us funding to rebuild Bliss Elementary. From that time, we've traveled to Washington DC, and we've met with the Department of Defense to share with them information about, they've shared information with us about how to proceed. We've done a lot of work on building the plan. And so today, we've got members of our team that will be sharing with you where we are in the process, what the remaining part of the process will be, and how we will choose to fund the 20% of the project that the district will be responsible for. Because should the board approve this item this afternoon, it will give us the opportunity to submit our formal application to the Department of Defense. And if our application is accepted, the Department of Defense would pay 80% of the cost of rebuilding Bliss Elementary brand new, and the district would be responsible for 20%. I think that we've done this in the past with Logan Elementary. So at this point, I'll hand it over to Manny Verduzco and his team so he can share with you the work that we've done to bring this item to you for consideration.
Members of the board, Ms. Ayavera, as Ms. Ayavera mentioned, we have reached the grant application approval process on our work for the public schools and military installation for Bliss Elementary. Part of the process was to work with our consultants to get more help with the site analysis of the Bliss, as well with the conceptual design and net zero improvements. So today we want to provide you an update on where we're at. We want to introduce our consultants here. It's from Pflugerville, Pfluger Architects, Isabel Corsino and Greg Wellman, and from Carr Daniels Architects, Mr. Victor Soto. So they have a brief presentation to go through.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Victor Soto with Carl Daniel Architects, and with me is Isabel Corsino and Greg Wellman. And together, we are the design team that was hired by EPISD for the study of the future net zero Bliss Elementary School, as you guys stated. A brief history of our involvement with this study is about 1 month ago, we performed site visits to 3 EPISD schools, one being the existing Fort Bliss campus, Duran, and Navarrete. We also, following that, had a design charrette, and the main purpose for this was to receive inspiration, direction, and community feedback on what the goals are for the new potential future project. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Isabel.
Thank you, Victor. Can everyone see the screen? Perfect. As Victor mentioned earlier, we had the opportunity to have site visit and the charrette, and we got a lot of information from that. From that, we received a lot of data. We, at one point of the charrette, printed these 24 by 36 boards and showed many pictures of local architecture and architecture around. El Paso district, as well as for Bliss, mentioned what they liked and they didn't like. And from that, we got notes of what is important. We understand that every building communicates a message, and the question to answer is, what message does your campus should communicate to your community? For what we've understood, El Paso cares about the students and the importance of education. So this is an opportunity to create a story. Let's create a new book. And what is the story that we want to tell? From what we heard during the charrette, the ones bulleted in dark are the ones that repeated themselves the most. And out of those, the district wants something, a school that is modern, defined volumes, integrated landscape, outdoor learning, fits with the Southwest context. There's screens and glazing, large overhangs, simple, enclosed patio, and second floor collaboration spaces.
So we had three main goals as a design team coming out of the charrette. First, we wanted a building that focused on health and wellness. I think we heard that topic here today. We wanted certainly to improve learning, but we also wanted a net zero school, all within a defined budget. So what's a net zero school? A net zero school is a school when you drastically reduce the energy reduction of that school, like using high performance systems like geothermal for your HVAC systems as an example. You also increase your natural daylighting, reducing the loads on the building. And when you add solar panels on the roof, guess what? You get net zero. Or in other words, your building is so efficient, the district doesn't have a utility bill. And what you see on this chart, not only are we talking first costs, but long-term costs, that net zero buildings significantly reduce your energy and operational costs long-term, where you have more focus on learning. So speaking of learning, there's two major factors in the building that we like to focus on to improve learning: health and wellness. When you focus on health and wellness, we're talking about improved indoor air quality. We heard a lot from the stakeholders at Fort Bliss. We understand from the studies like in Harvard School of Public Health, we know that improved indoor air quality increases your cognitive function for learning. Secondly is access to quality daylight, quality natural daylighting. Studies show that when you do this, you can increase your test scores by up to 26%. Thirdly, a building as a teaching tool was a theme. Man, I got this from Manny. I'm going to steal it from him. But he inspired us during this session to move El Paso ISD forward, to challenge the status quo, to be innovative, 21st century learning, STEM programs, robotics, coding. So we have a tremendous opportunity in this new facility to have the building as a teaching tool with interactive learning, solar labs, and things of that nature. And I heard the superintendent say, and I quote, "Engage the community to build high-quality learning experiences for our students." Now, we believe you have a tremendous opportunity with this facility. And finally, there's a bonus here. Believe it or not, our federal government, as we talked today, has unleashed the Inflation Reduction Act, signed the law August 16th of 22. This is $370 billion in funding that the government has to incentivize you to reduce carbon reductions through things like geothermal and solar and high-performance systems. The money I'm talking about is in addition to the grant that you're going to apply for. So the way it works is this. They have what's called the investment tax credits. So obviously at El Paso ISD, you don't pay taxes. However, you have the direct pay option. So you can get 30% of a rebate back when you're designing for geothermal or putting on solar on your buildings. Also, El Paso happens to be in what the government calls an energy community. That means there's an additional 10% kicker. So now El Paso ISD gets 40% of a rebate back once this school is completed for all the costs of your geothermal and solar system. So in layman's terms, let's say this costs $6 million to implement. The district would get $2.4 million back. We're eligible for $2.4 million back through the Inflation Reduction Act program.
Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
So moving on, oh, how did that happen? Let me see.
You need a technology guy.
Yes. Oh, did it reverse it? There, perfect. Apologies for that. Okay. So now we're going to discuss the site analysis. Fort Bliss Elementary School has a prime site. It has visual connection to the historical district. A lot of the students that go to Fort Bliss are part of the historical district area. On the other side of the connector, you have the Fort Bliss base, and then to access the school, you have the north Fort Bliss gate and then the south Fort Bliss gate. This isn't showing the existing site context, previous image, just in a 3D model. Right now, this is existing site, existing building for the elementary school, where you have the two connector roads, Highway 54 and then Sheridan Road. Sheridan Road will be one way in the future. So that's something that we need to look at as well. So climate is very important in El Paso. As we were looking at this project as a net zero project, solar orientation is key to provide more daylighting, as Greg mentioned, and reduce solar heat gain. Orientation is very important as well within the project. Knowing where the sun is will lead us to where the building is going to be oriented. Ideally, this is the best orientation where you're going to receive north and south will have the most windows, so there will be a lot of daylight coming in, and that will be the most efficient and best possible solution for the classrooms. With the identity of the school, we had to look at what are the visual connections there. There's two at the moment. There's Highway 54 and the historical district where the Fort Bliss the elementary school can look at, as well as you have the base right behind the school. This site is quite particular because there's no back corner or no back end, so we have to be really conscious of the architecture, how it should be respectful from all sides. With being in Fort Bliss, there's also the Department of Defense requirements, and we studied it extensively and incorporated it with the grant documentation. One example is the security standoff. The requirement that we have is 50 feet off the site line. So this is an example of how that would look like. We did a test fit to see with all these assumptions, adding the DOD, the sun exposure, the site requirements that the district will want. And we looked at, this is a possible solution. We have on the south side a bus drop-off, a service and parking area. Then we have a potential outdoor play on that side. Then you have the two-story building with an outdoor learning area within like an interior courtyard. And then on the north side, you have a potential parking space for teachers as well as parents. And then on the red-orange arrow you have there, that would be the main entrance. And also on the north side, you have a potential outdoor play. We're also thinking of the future, growth is a big thing. We think that there could be a potential future expansion where you see the dotted space up on the far top side of the rendering. With the conceptual design, we were going back to the charrette, the DOD requirements, net zero, and our research in El Paso, and we looked at these goals as something important for us to continue the design. The design needs to be simple, not necessarily simplistic, compact, expandable, has to have the correct orientation, durable materials, efficient systems, and building as a teaching tool. From the previous image I showed you with the post-it notes, these are the images that everyone loved. What did they love? We started looking at it, and what were the common themes? We saw that materiality is very important in those the previous images, and started looking at the architecture of the Southwest as an inspiration, and also El Paso. With the Southwest architecture, you have browns and reds and tans, and also looking at the materiality. This is an example, not necessarily what's going to be for the building, but just some things to get inspired by. You have rammed earth, light and dark brick, the local vegetation, you have corten steel, you have metal panel. The metal panel, we were looking at it for colors, for inspiration, because it's an elementary school, it should be fun and exciting. And then wood to bring it at the main entrance as a welcoming and inviting entry space. This is the existing site plan with the existing school, which will be demoed. And this is the proposed site plan. Here, we have, we can start from the bottom up. There is a field that is shared, and from what we heard, it's going to be included within the project. Then we have the bus route on the south side with the yellow arrow. Then you have on the left, you're going to have open play that is going to have an open space and also a hard surface play area for children. The white building that you see there is a 2-story elementary school, and it has a covered outdoor learning space like as a courtyard. And then on the roof of the school, there's going to be photovoltaic solar panels, as Greg had mentioned earlier. On the north side, you're going to see the parking for parents and teachers, as well as another open play area for children. And on the red arrow that you see there, that would be the main entrance.
So I'm going to interrupt for just a second.
Yes.
Because we're on a time crunch here. So although all of this information is really important, I'm wondering if we can move through just a little more quickly to honor the time of the board.
Okay, thank you. We just have 2 more slides. So this is the end of our part of the presentation. We understand from what we discussed with you that Fort Bliss, the elementary school needs to be part and reflect the community at Fort Bliss, and that is very important. So here, very quickly, the materials that are part of the Southwest architecture. On the left side, you're going to see the dining and gym. On the center of the image, on the bottom floor, you're going to have an administration area, which could be inspired by ram earth material. Above that, there will be an outdoor learning space for children. And then another important element is the security. Those benches that you see there are acting as bollards. So, God forbid, someone comes in, a person can't go through. So, thinking about security, thinking about efficiency, thinking about vegetation as well for kids to be inspired by. Okay, and then this is our last slide. In the center of the rendering, you're going to have a security vestibule. To sum up, we are looking at potential opportunities for the school to become an educational learning space. And also, we want to be very aware that a lot of military families travel, and we want this space to be safe, physically, emotionally for them, and for them to feel it as if it's their second home. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Verduzco, as you come up to the podium, can you kind of summarize, rather than go through every single slide, can you summarize? I know that the timeline started in March. We've moved through project development through the last few months. We're here on August 1st, so that can you start from there just to let the board know what happens from this point forward?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So in summary, the project scope encompasses building a facility of 119,000 square feet, 800 student capacity, and a 2-story facility. The budget right now, we projected is $74 million and 815,000. The estimated completion date is June 2027. Now, as far as projections, as far as enrollment, this is from our ASAP staff. We're still pending more information from the demographer as well. I just wanted to point out that across in Fort Bliss, we still have a community being built by the Department of Defense, the Beaufort Future Housing, which has more incoming families there. And again, like I said, our projected costs, $74,800,000, and Ms. Aguirre will provide more on the funding.
Good afternoon, President Irobali, board members, Ms. Saavedra, Martha Aguirre, Chief Financial Officer. As you can see and as you listen through the proposal, the grant requires a 20% match cost for the district to fund this program and this project. And as it is a great opportunity. And so what you have in front of you is a proposal that we have as how we would be financing as we submit the grant in a couple of days. So the yellow box is basically where I'd like your attention to. So we're looking at the 20% cost match of the $74.8 million is $14.9 million. So looking at that as the requirement, we've evaluated, and in an effort to avoid entering into another lease or debt to the district, we've evaluated our opportunities. And so looking at the remaining 2016 bond funds, we have interest revenue that we're proposing to use $2 million of to cover the project. And then when we look at bond contingency funds, we are estimating right now, not all projects are completed, but what we can see right now is that we could potentially use $8 million of the contingency funds to cover that 20% cost match. And lastly, looking at unreserved fund balance in fiscal year 25, and I want to be very clear that it's not something that we would use now, but in the future years, would be $4.3 million, which is approximately 2.9 days of fund balance. That would comprise that cost match as we propose to the federal government right now. However, realizing that we have several months, almost a year to be quite honest, before we actually start the project, we also have other potential opportunities and considerations for the board to look and evaluate once we're ready to start the project. And that would be that if we were to consider a bond passage or proposal in future years, this project could also be part of that package, and therefore the funds that we are currently proposing would not be utilized. But in the event that we stuck to what was originally proposed, this would be the funding sources that we would utilize to cover the 20%.
So at this point, the board's consideration, or we're asking for the board's consideration in terms of approving this project. With your approval, then the next step would be for us to submit a formal application to the Department of Defense.
Correct.
For consideration. And then the Department of Defense would communicate whether our application has been accepted. And if so, you've got the design, the charrette, the information, and we've got a financial plan to budget for the 20%.
We would not be hearing of the award for several months, but we would bring that back to you for a final approval.
Trustee Hernandez.
In your explanation, Ms. Saavedra and Ms. Aguirre, so when you apply for that application, do you have to disclose how we're going to finance it?
Yes.
And so we would need to know at this point in time how we're going to be able to finance it. Therefore, so will it be separate from maybe a possible bond issuance that we're looking for?
Right.
And do we
Right.
make that distinction at the voting site, or
Yes.
do we include it all together?
Well, so let me, there's a two-part question. So the answer to the first part of the question is that in the slide that Ms. Aguirre do you want to put that back up? In the yellow section of that slide, it shows how we will currently finance the match of $14.9+ million. Should we be fortunate enough to bring a bond proposal to the voters and it pass, then we could
The project would be included in that bond proposal.
in there, right? And so then we would not have to use this. But this is the plan, because there's no guarantee that, number one, we would call a bond, and if we did, whether the voters would accept it or not, right? So this is the plan.
Correct.
So therefore, we're gonna factor it in at the year that we need it.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
I guess my question is, what do we have in bond contingency right now? Is that going to deplete the entire fund?
No,
or
it would not
severely?
deplete the entire, there is approximately $14 6.5 in bond contingency at this point.
So leaving us with 6.5
Yes.
if it's 8, and then of the interest?
There's $2 million that have been, that are still available.
Okay, available.
Then what, knowing all that we know right now, with our fund balance days, what would that bring us down to after using 3.9 days for
So
this?
if 2.9. So if we were to utilize the funds right now, it'd put us at 74.1 with our forecasted projection. Please remember, we're still in the audit process. Our standing fund balance level right now is at 89 days. Our projected, as we presented in June, was at 84 days. However, this is current year. The use of funds would be in probably 2 years in the future.
Therefore, approximately 75, would be down to 74 days.
If we looked at the level right now, however,
Right.
future years we would understand the need to assign and maintain that level.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
So I think there's no further questions, so I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I move that we accept this motion. Or do you want me to read it just like
So it
it
reads,
said?
I move the board authorize administration to proceed with the final proposal submission, including the 20% cost match requirement as presented. Yes?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so that, I guess I will do the motion, and it will be seconded by trustee Hernandez. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That is 6, that passes unanimously, 6-0, with trustee Hinani not present for the meeting. Okay, so that takes us to item 4B, discussion and take appropriate action on endorsement of candidates of TASB Board of Directors. Are there any proxies or candidates present that want to speak to the board? Seeing none. I know that we received an email from Ms. Naheda from Socorro Independent School District about 2 weeks ago or so, telling us why she thinks that she'd be qualified. I personally have not heard from Ms. Bullard, but I don't know if there's any discussion from the board on this.
I reached out and asked how we should, go about doing this, and I don't know exactly how to choose. So I'm open to any type of recommendations from you all, because I don't know the candidates, nor, I know we were given the resumes and such, but I don't know how to choose.
So Ms. Naheda is the sitting representative for now. She stepped in for Armando when he left to join the board of directors. She's been serving for, I think, about a year now, and probably less than a year, or a little bit more than a year, I can't remember. I have met with her a couple of times here and there at functions, things of that nature. She does understand the plight of what EPISD and other major school districts are going through. She's done a good job in her year. Personally, that's what my preference is, but I've not heard from the other individual. So I don't know if there's any questions. I mean, I'll make a motion if y'all are okay. Yeah. So then I move that the board endorse Cynthia Naheda for TASB Board of Directors, Region 19 seat. Do I have a second?
I second.
So I have a first by myself and a second by trustee Hernandez. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes unanimously 5-0 with trustee Acevedo and trustee Hinani not present. That takes us to 4C, which is discuss and take action on the selection of the delegate and alternate to the 2023 TASB conference. So for those new trustees that are there, I think we are planning, most of us or not all of us are planning going to the TASB conference. At that point, there's a delegation meeting where they vote on the rules and update kind of what's happening from a TASB perspective. We appoint a designee to go vote on behalf of EPISD. It's a gigantic auditorium where there is every school district that's part of TASB. They vote and they just interact with the other school districts. It's fun. I did it my first year, my very first meeting I did that. It was a good experience. So I don't know if there's anyone that wants to volunteer for that position or that role.
I volunteer.
All right, and then, yeah, is anyone interested in being the alternate?
I mean, I can be an alternate.
Is there anyone else interested?
I was going to nominate you, Trustee Beal, so I'm glad you nominated yourself.
Wonderful. So then if I can get a motion.
Daniel, you want to make the
Yep.
motion?
Yep. I move that the board designate Trustee Hernandez and the delegate, Trustee Beals, as the alternate for the 2023 Texas Association of School Board Delegate Assembly on September 30th, 2023.
Do I have a second? That's a motion by Trustee Call, a second by Trustee Cuellar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous, 5 yeses with Trustee Acevedo and Hanani not present. That takes us to 4D, election of board officers for vice president. Seeing as we are 2 trustees down, we're going to wait and postpone this item to our regular board meeting, August 15th. And that takes us to item 5, which is the adjournment. So we will adjourn this meeting at 2:32. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry, we all have work schedules, and we're cycling through into that time where we all need to get back. So thank you so much for all your hard work today.
Yeah.